Haha, remember me? You're gosh darn tootin' you do. And I'm here to tell you guys about Amino. Amino is a great and awesome, that's right, both of those things, social media app for communities that share your interests. You like Nintendo? There's an Amino. One Piece? That's the greatest treasure you'll ever find. You share my interests? How about Ruby Amino, or considering that you're watching this video, the Red versus Blue Amino. There's a community for everything and everyone. But what can you do in these Aminos? Well, if you're an artist making fan art, you can share your awesome work with those who will be jealous of your awesomeness. If you can't wait to talk about the upcoming season of RVB, then you can jump into some chats and discuss all kinds of different topics and theories as well. Everyone there is super cool and nice, so don't be shy. If you think you know the show and all of its details, then test your knowledge with some quizzes. You can't disprove that I get 100% on every test. Just be sure to go to the App Store and download the Amino app. Once in, go to the search bar and type in RVB to join in with everyone, or just any community you'd like to be a part of. And while you're at it, be sure to add me, EruptionFang. I'm still alone, but in a new box canyon. RVB Amino. Red vs. Blue Season 16 is coming right around the corner, so I thought, what better way to get pumped for a new season than a top 7 list? Why top 7? That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't that hurt your recommendation stats so you don't get recommended to people because you're doing top 7s instead of top 10s? Yes. Yes. I don't know why I don't just conform. So let's begin the top 7, please. Now this may seem like quite the odd character to start off with, considering that we haven't really seen anything from her. And I am in fact talking about Allison the human. Not Beta, not Texas, none of the AI versions of her, but rather Allison. Some of you may be thinking, well, what could possibly be the difference between the two anyway? Texas is literally an AI based off her, so they should be the same. And to that I would say, yeah, no. Not really. So while yes, it is a very easy idea to have that AI and human would be and act pretty much the same, you do have to take a look at the difference between Leonard and the Alpha. The Alpha was also an AI based on a human, but the two aren't carbon copies of one another. The Alpha is a bit more of a smartass, gets hyper emotional and yells, while Leonard is very outwardly calm and not sarcastic. The two do share many of the same core traits, but the AI ends up being a bit more of a hyperbolized version altogether. So while it may not seem like a bad thing that people think Allison and Tex were the same, considering many people absolutely love Tex, I myself am not one for the super hardcore badass that is totally awesome and super cool. That version of Allison is ultimately an AI and just a memory. I'm sure that Leonard's memory of her was exactly that. I'm sure he saw her as everything that we see Texas being. But from the small bit that we do know about her thanks to the Ultimate Fan Guide, was that Texas was still a badass who saved Leonard's ass. But also because of the clip in the season 10 finale, she's actually super sweet and caring. And that side of Allison is something that Texas never really ended up outwardly showing. Don't get me wrong, there were sweet moments here and there, but it was always hidden behind a facade. Allison seemed to be both a badass and a caring person at the same time. And if I'm being honest, she would have been higher up on this list if not for the complete lack of information that we have on her. And by information, I mean the one short scene and a page from a book. But yes, if only we had more information or screen time or just anything really, then Allison probably would have been higher up on this list. This one may seem like a bit of a cheat considering that Maine and the Meta are kind of two different people. They may share a body, but his mind was altered. In Project Freelancer, he was just a brute soldier. He was used to hit hard. He wasn't the most reliable or capable soldier. He wasn't the most tactical, but he was a soldier and that was his sole purpose. It wasn't until his throat got damaged and he got Sigma that the Meta began to form. Maine never really had any alternative motives. He was given a mission and so he did the mission. Sigma, being the creativity, swayed Maine and ultimately controlled him. Sigma was obsessed with metastability, when an AI achieves a state that they are technically fully human. Sigma managed to drive Maine towards this goal. Maine is, and I don't know if you know this, prepare yourselves, already a human, so he doesn't actually need to achieve metastability. That's why Maine no longer went by Maine. He was then the Meta. It's one of those things that love him or hate him, Maine is technically a victim, as is kind of everyone. And that's part of the appeal for me with him. Most people view him as a scary brute murderer. And while they're not wrong, it's the fact that he can double as all those things as well as be a victim himself that makes him such a great character. But nonetheless, Maine and Meta are technically the same person, even though I see them separately, and they both make the list. Tucker is definitely someone on this list that has wavered from time to time, and it's never for bad reasons. On one hand, I love the overly sexual, all-about comedy Tucker, but then you have the Tucker that has actually developed. Now that may seem like quite the odd criticism to have with the character, but it's true. It's hard to balance both the comedy aspect and the newfound leader aspect of Tucker at the same time. Usually, he's one or the other. I like them both for different reasons, and it's part of the reason he's on this list. Tucker was one of the most entertaining characters throughout the show's entire lifespan. He's always been a constant in terms of the comedy. However, it was probably the moment that he got his sword that I became invested in his character. Despite not being the main focus for so long, he, alongside Tex, moved the story forward, with Church still being the man in front. But after season 10 and the loss of Church, Tucker had to be the one to take up his position of leader, considering Sarge and Washington weren't there. And seeing that slow burn of Tucker refusing to accept leadership and just overall not wanting it all together, to then seeing him realize that they need someone, i.e. him, to rally hope because no one else is there to do it who normally would. The Chorus trilogy may not have been my favorite arc, but in terms of the main characters, mainly Tucker, and putting him in a position that made sense, separating him from the other leaders, and setting up his development, and most importantly, only choosing to develop Tucker, it worked. The writers didn't attempt to develop every single character all at the same time. They sought to develop Tucker, and they succeeded. So, it's a little bit of both for me. I like the comedy side, but also appreciate the developed serious side. Dr. Leonard Church. This is yet another one of those weird ones because it's not that I actually like him, but he's such an awful person that I just love it. I mean, the whole series technically exists because of this one man's infatuations with his wife. Most likely, none of this would have happened if Allison had not died. In a sense, it's actually kinda sweet what he's trying to do after losing his wife. All he really wanted was to be able to recreate her and be with her once more. He was so distraught that Allison died in the Great War that he became so determined to ensure that the human species survives the fight against them. All because he lost his wife to the Covenant. It's such a genuinely sad story from someone who both was and wasn't the bad guy. Yeah, he may have lost his mind a bit and didn't care about other people, but the big picture. He was willing to sacrifice and test on 50 soldiers if it meant the survival of their species. Is that a messed up attitude to have? Yeah, he kind of almost got them all killed. But even with the ends justify the means mentality, he is genuinely one of the most interesting and deepest characters in the entire series. That's right, I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but I genuinely do like South Dakota. I get it, people have a vendetta against her because she shot Wash, and she shot her brother, but gosh darn it, it wasn't her fault. Okay, maybe it was a little bit her fault. Instead of going into all the reasons that I do like her right now, I've previously made a video about why I like her, so instead of sounding like a broken record, I would like to move your attention over to that video because it will explain things a lot better and in more detail. But watch that after you watch this video. You just wait. Just wait. Sister, Griff's very own blood sibling. If you watched the video on why I like South, which you shouldn't have watched yet, then you most likely could have guessed that Sister would also be on this list. In fact, a good amount of the comments did make that comparison. From being a younger sibling myself, as well as having a favoritism bias towards female characters, Sister easily biased her way up on my list. Now that's not to say that I don't like her for other reasons. While she may not have ever been relevant to any of the main story so far, her presence is always a welcome sight for me. She's entertaining, her sense of comedy is something that none of the other characters can make cause she's a girl, and I myself have always wanted more Sister in the main story. In fact, I really want her to join the main cast of characters. And I'm not talking like Doc, who comes in and goes and people forget about all the time. I'm talking side by side with the other Reds and Blues, since technically she's actually still on their team, and going on all kinds of crazy adventures. The end of season 15 left me hopeful with that idea since she was reunited with her brother and standing alongside everyone else. So for the future seasons, I do genuinely hope Sister has a more prominent presence in the series. That's right, the shotgun-wielding, speech-giving, southern-sounding, reddest red, Sarge. I ran out of things to say about him. Sarge is absolutely my favorite character in the entire series. I always enjoy myself someone who is both over the top, but also completely tolerable. Something that never ceases to get me every time, no matter what show it may come to, are motivational speeches. I have absolutely no reason why, but if a show can give a motivational speech, and I'm not talking about real life type motivational speeches, but speeches that are so tropey, so over the top, and has music designed specifically for this one moment, It gets me every time. Never has the story ever been about Sarge, or has he ever taken the main focus, but he's still managed to keep quite the heavy presence above so many of the other characters. And Sarge being my favorite, it does kind of upset me that he's never had his moment in the spotlight. None of the Reds really have. It's kind of been a Church story for about 10 years, then a Tucker one for about 3, and the next 2 weren't really anyone's. But let's be honest here, what is the show really about? Some AI trying to find its creator? No. A bunch of friends experiencing journeys together? Not even close. We all know what the show is really about, and that's Sarge. They've been waiting all this time to give us the true story of Red versus Blue. Sarge is literally the first word in the name of the show. You're telling me that all this time the story's been about Church of Blue? That's the 3rd word. Sarge is number 1. It's time for the red to shine through the darkness that is blue. It's Sarge's time to shine. So there you have it. Those were my top 7 favorite Red vs. Blue characters so far, at least. I will be making my 7 least favorite characters, so I'm sure that'll go over well with everyone and not enrage a single person. Until then, if you like the video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really does help the channel, and let me know whether or not you guys want more content like this. Subscribe if you feel oh so inclined to, and if you do want to help the channel in the best way possible, then consider being a sponsor on my Patreon. You'll get all the content early and instant, but until then, bye-bye.